Welcome to Living in the Past, where two middle-aged dudes relive their past by enjoying the pop culture of their youth. Devin, are you ready to sell homes that are built on a cemetery, piss off some ghosts, get slimed with ectoplasm, cross over to the other side and back, and finally realize that TVs are bad?
Whoa. Well, Jeremy, as a former owner of a home inspection company, this is the episode I've been waiting for, because clearly, had they had a fucking home inspection, we wouldn't have had to go through some of the challenges that this family went through.
Yeah, I think you're right. Just a little, checking the tires kind of situation.
I mean, it wouldn't have taken that much.
Yeah, the bodies weren't that deep underground.
Quite literally.
Right there. Yeah, it's the 40th anniversary of Poltergeist. I saw this in the theater with my dad. I don't know what he was thinking.
What is it? Yeah, your dad just takes you to the,
Summer of 82 was magical.
Wow.
Magical.
Bryan Adams wants a word, but go ahead.
It scared the hell out of me. When did you first see Poltergeist, Devin?
It was probably right around that time. I don't recall seeing it in the theater. No, this came out the same time, right around as Fright Night. There was this run of non-slasher horror movies, early 80s. Yeah. And it also came around the time of Creep Show. Is that right?
This is the summer of 82.
Okay.
So this is Conan summer, E.T. summer. And then Poltergeist probably had an influence on those other films coming out. Because it's for the early into the mid 80s, because I think Friday Night's 85.
Okay.
Poltergeist says, yes, you can make these types of movies that will make you a lot of money.
Lots of money. Yeah, I will probably default to my answer on just about every episode that I probably saw it on VHS at Travis's house. That's always a safe bet.
Oh, thank God for Travis.
Yes, it's true.
Thank God for Travis. We need to get this out of the way, though.
Okay.
Poltergeist is not directed by Tobe Hooper, who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's listed as the director. This is
lies.
This is a Steven Spielberg film.
It is.
It's crazy. Just recently, goodness sakes, John Leonetti, he's made people, if they're in the horror genre. In 2014, there's a movie called Annabelle.
Yeah.
Leonetti made that. He was the director of that, but he was on set. He was a first assistant camera on Poltergeist.
Okay.
And just recently, this was just a few years ago.
Yeah.
He was Spielberg made this. He made this. In fact, his quote is, "The shoot was very intense, very fun, very technical movie to work on. There's a lot going on, and candidly, Steven Spielberg directed that movie. There's no question." However, Tobe Hooper, I love that man so much. I love how he threw that in.
Yeah.
But this was, this is what was going on in 82 was that Spielberg had a contract to do E.T. And the Directors Guild of America basically was policing. You can't do two things at one time. There was contracts. There was all this red tape. And so to circumvent this,
naturally,
Tobe Hooper's directing Poltergeist, air quotes for those listening, which is everybody. We're not videoing this. But Spielberg just kind of plays this game. And it was interesting. Amblin, which is Spielberg's company, you'll notice the logo. It's the E.T. logo of, Elliot and E.T. going across the moon on the bike. Amblin has a YouTube channel. They have a 5-minute making of little documentary. You go on there, you can look at it. Tobe Hooper is in it for 5 seconds. It's Tobe Hooper, director. Spielberg's in it for 4 minutes and 58 seconds.
Yes.
And it's all Spielberg did it. And you look at all sorts of making of documentaries or footage. Spielberg is front and center, and I think he was editing E.T. at the time.
Nice.
And yet he's bumping over to the Poltergeist set.
Two-timing it.
He is. And it's a Spielberg film. And on the rewatch, I watched it Friday night.
Yeah.
We're recording on a Monday. And I was watching, I'm like, this is a freaking Steven Spielberg movie. There's so many shots and things about it that makes it Spielberg. Devin, do you feel like it's a Spielberg film just by watching it? Does it have that feel to you as an audience member? Or
well, here's the interesting thing: is it wasn't until probably half a dozen years ago that I even knew that like this dude Hooper existed when it came to this film. Like, but from the time that I watched the Poltergeist back in the day, I just had always assumed it was a Spielberg thing. That is all my posse ever knew, Jeremy. So like I had to do investigation like that half a dozen or so years ago. So yeah, and I think it sets up, right? It's got a little bit of lightness to it.
Yep.
The way that Spielberg uses child actors it's very reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the shots, and I think just even some of the it's a horror genre, but it's not. Well, clearly it's not slasher film, but it's not. You mentioned Annabelle. Get the fuck out of here with that thing. But it's not. It's not one of those like creepy, like like scare you out of nowhere type things, right? No jump scares, jump scares, right? It's got some moments, but it's almost like it's the it's the horror equivalent of like National Lampoon's Family Vacation. Here's the family, everyone loves them, and throughout the time that even like all of these hauntings are happening, it still feels like this family's in it together. Like it's gonna be okay.
Yep. Yeah, totally. It's so interesting. I was trying to put my finger on it. Like, why is it a Spielberg film? Like, what makes it? And you mentioned like how the child actors work, and there's this thing that Spielberg is able to do. He does it in Jaws. He does it in, my goodness, Close Encounters has moments like this. Poltergeist has moments like this. E.T. obviously. It's where there's sort of chaos going on, where there's like 4 or 5 different conversations happening, but the camera helps you to focus on what's important, but you see the kids are all doing stuff like he does. It's a magical thing that he does, because I think as parents we've all had those moments where like you're on the phone trying to talk to someone, the kids are fighting, a couple of your kids are fighting, your wife's saying something to you, it's just chaos, and Spielberg just he gets what that looks like. It feels like. It's funny. There's a movie called Super 8 that came out almost 10 years ago, and J.J. Abrams made that, and he basically blueprinted Spielberg. And you have the same kind of crap going on where all the kids are talking, but the camera is resting on the main conversation. And I don't know if the volume is that different where you hear. I would love to talk to a sound designer where you hear that conversation that the director wants you to hear. Even though all these other conversations, I don't know, or if it's just a trick of the camera where because the camera's focused on their faces, anyways, Abrams does it. Like he does the exact same thing. And there's a few like town shots where in Super 8, the chief of police is kind of walking around, or the sheriff is walking around, and there's all these people. It's like out of Jaws. When Brody's walking around town, same stuff. And Poltergeist has that. It has that stamped on it. Like, this isn't Tobe Hooper. This is Steven Spielberg. And there's also camera angles. Like, he does a lot of editing to the eyes, where we talked about this on E.T. recently on our E.T. show, where he just puts the camera eye level with the kids. And when the kids look at something, we're seeing it from that. He does this in Poltergeist. Like it is so obviously directed by him that to suggest otherwise is pretty funny to me.
I love the story behind that, though. I mean, what I love even more is we're still acting like there's like no statute of limitations on what he did.
It's crazy. Like, so here's American Film Institute. Here's what they say. Despite a clause in Spielberg's Universal Pictures contract preventing him from working on any motion picture while directing E.T., the filmmaker remained closely involved with Poltergeist to attempt, because he was a producer, attempt to keep the budget within 10% of the approved $9.5 million. So
my college girlfriend, Jeremy, she loosely stayed
within budget.
Not within budget, but she loosely oversaw one relationship while working elsewhere.
That happens.
Did I just say working elsewhere?
Well, as long as we don't say the name of Susie. So it's not Susie. It's
Carrie.
Wow. Which is scary. Just that name,
right?
Evokes all sorts of things. But like, it's funny. After all was said and done, not Spielberg, but basically, Hooper was owed an additional, get this, a whopping $15,000.
Good night, man.
So they gave him 15 grand and said, "We're sorry for whatever happened.
Yeah,
here's some." It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So you have a movie that's really a Spielberg film. In fact, I was on the rewatch, Devin. It gets to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Craig T. Nelson pushes out the TV out of the hotel room,
right,
and the camera backs away on a slow dolly shot, kind of goes backwards, and it goes, produced by Steven Spielberg. And I'm like, I wait, and it's like credits keep rolling, and then finally, I mean, it's 3 or 4 names. It's like directed by Tobe Hooper. I'm like,
that's awesome,
dude. And Hooper, to his credit, made probably one of the 5 greatest horror films ever in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
Like, this guy's no slouch.
Yeah.
And yet, it seems like he's not angry. He's just like, cool. Like,
I mean,
it was
he just
fun.
probably like showed up on set,
Got to
had some coffee, got paid, dude.
Wow.
That's great.
I wish I could do that.
Well, there's been years in my teaching career have definitely been like that. Just show up with some coffee and just get paid.
Well, Poltergeist is a ghost movie.
Yeah.
We got to have this conversation, Devin. What's your stand on ghosts? Are they real, fake? Had any ghost experiences in your life?
Woo. They are real.
Wow, I didn't know that about you.
Oh, they are real.
Okay.
There's an issue with a pottery wheel I don't want to talk about that involves a ghost.
Almost spit my coffee. Those pottery wheels.
I know. Ditto. I will say that I have had entanglements with the supernatural.
What the fuck? Okay.
Yeah.
You have to talk about this. Like, we'll wait to get to the summary of the movie.
Oh, man.
So come on, dude. Like, you got to share.
Okay.
Entanglements.
Entanglements.
Very Star Wars.
It's very much so. Imperial entanglements. Okay. So, I'm trying to like make sure I don't out anybody. All right. So, one example was a friend was struggling with some stuff.
Yeah.
The friend had been asked to be prayed over.
Yes.
And
this is good.
During this, his eyes, I'm talking about the full eyeball, Jeremy, not just talking about like the pupil, turned solid black. The person that was my friend, that was clearly under some type of otherworldly influence, turned his head and looked right at me. It was like this incredible moment of I am staring at the shell of my friend that is no longer in possession of his own self.
Wow.
There was another time when I was laying in bed. I felt the presence of something super dark. And I at first I thought like, oh, it's just me, just kind of like, when you wake up in those like dreamlike states or whatever.
Sure.
And I felt this incredible like pressure, like something was sitting on top of me.
Oh, wow.
And then when the pressure was released, there was like a clear seat indentation of where the pressure was, like where something was sitting on top of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what, do you go get a snack after that? Like, what do you do after that happens? Like, I'm going to go drink a beer. Yeah. I'm going to just go watch the sunset.
Start the day.
Like, what do you do?
Watch the sunset. I think it's just like, for me, it was just like trying to process like, what the fuck just happened?
Oh, wow.
I mentioned at the top of the show that I used to inspect homes, and there was this one home in the town that I live in, SoCal, not to be confused with SoCal. And there was this home. It was a craftsman style home, so it was built in mid to late 1800s.
Oh, wow.
While it had been updated over the years, it wasn't like a true modern renovation like we would think of it. And so the property was fenced off, and I decided that I just wanted to go into it. Now there's no power or anything to the property at this point. And in fact, it's more or less boarded up, but I found a way to get in. And I came in through a window, and on the living room floor, it's this old great oak planks floor, there was a pentagram painted. And
are you serious?
I'm totally serious. I'm totally serious.
That's when I go back out the window.
Yeah, and there was just enough daylight coming in through some of the cracks in the boards where I could kind of see around. I had my flashlight with me, and
you've never told me this story.
You've never asked.
Okay, well here we are. This is real time, listeners.
And as I'm looking around, so the ground floor was the living room, and then there was the kitchen dining room area.
Yeah.
And as I'm going through there, there is old houses creak, but old houses don't creak in succession.
Right.
Where it sounds like someone's walking.
Right.
And that is definitely what was happening upstairs in this house.
Oh, wow.
And it just came to this moment where either I'm going to be brave.
Yeah.
And I'm going to kind of do a little Scooby-Doo action and check it out.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
I got the fuck out of there.
Yeah, that's what you do. Now, most white people will investigate.
Yeah.
Our friends, the African American community, are getting out of there because there's wisdom in that.
Well, I mean, let me go back to Eddie Murphy. I don't remember if it was Raw or Delirious. And why don't white people just leave the house? Get out. Too bad we can't stay. But I will tell you, in that situation, I have never, even the two previous incidents that I described, I have never literally felt like the amount of dark energy that I've ever felt. When I was in that house, it was even before the tiptoeing, tap dancing upstairs, I'm just there is something here that is clearly not visible to the naked eye.
Right.
And as intrigued as I wasn't that intrigued.
I don't need to know the mysteries of the universe here, baby.
Exactly. But what about you, though?
Nothing. I'm so boring.
This is turning the tables. Usually you have the great stories.
I got nothing, man.
Wow.
I've had some weird, listeners might not. For 2 years, I lived as a missionary in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of stories, and it was mainly connected to the supernatural in relationship to Christianity.
Yeah.
And so I had people tell me stuff that happened to them, but I never had direct interaction. I've had some weird people act weird, but they were probably just high on drugs.
Sure.
So I've never really had ghost experience. I've felt terror a few times in weird situations where you wouldn't think you would feel terror.
Yeah.
Going to sleep, waking up when I was 13, 14 years old. And I still can't understand why I felt that way.
Yeah.
I didn't watch anything before bed or, I didn't read anything. So those are a few real strange incidents, but I can't point to any, this caused this. I can't.
Wow.
So, but I've never really had that experience. Yeah. Now, personally, I'm open. Sure.
Yeah.
Ghosts. Yeah. Why not? Of course, prepping for the show, I did the YouTube deep dive. Not fun because there's a lot of weird supernatural videos out there.
Yeah.
There's the top 5 most disturbing Poltergeist videos.
Right.
And those are really if someone like if someone staged it, it's really well done. I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
But I personally, I just have not had those experiences.
And it's one of the reasons, we're talking about, like we talked about Friday the 13th and, the Nightmare Before Elm Streets, and you mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And like those films don't bother me, but you give me a film that's like well done about paranormal and I will not watch that bitch. I will not watch that bitch.
It's actually the opposite for me. I have the most trouble with I like slasher films to an extent, but it depends. If it takes certain turns in the story, like if the victim is a certain type of victim, I'm out, man. I can't watch it. But yeah, so but Ghost, I'm kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah.
So where do you stand with like Blair Witch Project?
I watched it yesterday.
Did you really?
My kids.
Such a great film.
Yeah, we watched it, and the kids had never seen it, never really even heard of it, and of course, my son Sam, who's a horror film like aficionado. Yeah. Like he loves anyone being chased. He loves it. He giggles and laughs.
Nice.
I wish I had that ability. Yeah. Like, I'm terrified. He's just entertained. They loved it. They had a lot of questions. They didn't. Yeah. The ending was a little too ambiguous for them. Yeah. And it was like, wait, what's going on? Like, so Sam went and like YouTube, like the ending of Blair Witch. What happened? And we had multiple conversations yesterday.
I love this
about it. But yeah, I really enjoyed the Blair Witch Project. I think there are people that are able to tap into dark stuff that I can't quite understand, but I've seen it. I'm not necessarily saying supernatural, just something maybe even within themselves that's so dark and horrible that it's like the human nature can go to some really disturbing places. And so that's where I get a lot of the horror. So even just the hint in Blair Witch of like, at different times, like the characters are like, maybe the people from the town are messing with us. Yeah. And kind of like that. Yeah. Like I can buy into that.
So we used to own some property up the coast here in California, and all through like high school and stuff, we'd go camping. I'm like, my first car was a full size Ford van. Yeah, yeah. And so we would go like camping up there and just stay in the van. And there was one night. And this is remote. Like this isn't like, a corner lot in a subdivision. Yeah. This is remote, Jeremy. Literally in the mountains. And we were in the van, and it was probably like 10 o'clock and stuff. And it's summertime, but it's still dark outside. And it was like that scene in Blair Witch when we were there in the tent, because we heard shit around us. Wow. And then something started rocking the van. And we're just like, and thankfully we were teenagers with freaking shotguns. And so we came out of the van ready to like blast, but like no trace of anybody. Wow. Yeah. But so like when I see that Blair Witch thing, I'm just like, nope. Yeah, nope.
Well, I've been lost before.
Yeah.
And in the woods. Ooh. And it was up for those familiar with Alabama, it's like the Talladega National Forest. I got lost for me and a buddy were hiking. We were actually prepping for hiking the Appalachian Trail. Okay. So we were just it was kind of a timed hike. We had our maps. We had topographical maps. We relatively knew what we were doing.
Did you open them?
We opened them. We read them. But those moments in Blair Witch where they're like looking at the map and they're like confused and like, wait, is this the stream? Is this the ridge? Is this, like, I've felt that. Wow. That's a really demoralizing feeling when you feel like you're competent, and you got your compass, you got your map, and then you hit spots on the map where you might get a little turned around. Right. And that's what happened to us. And it like, we misidentified a few features on the map, and we were out, man. We were out. And so I think our hike started at sunrise, and we went way into, we got back to the vehicle at like 11 midnight. Whoa. Yeah. So we were out all day, and we were just, it was like we were speed hiking. We were trying to like, just getting really good shape for the hike. And so it is utterly, when you're in the middle of the woods at 11 at night,
Yeah.
it's not fun.
No.
And you hear all sorts of things,
Right.
because there's things out there.
Right.
And
right.
Thank God we kind of, before the sun went down, it was early spring, so it wasn't daylight for a long time.
Yeah.
But thankfully we identified a few things and kind of got our bearings before the sun went down.
Wow.
And so we kind of knew the direction to
Yeah.
head in, and we
Yeah.
found the car. But like, that was
I'm-
terrifying.
I'm like Vern in Stand By Me. Do not put me in the woods at night. No.
It was bad. Pointing pistols in every direction.
Yeah.
We once it got dark, we were moving.
Wow.
Like, we weren't slowing down.
Yeah.
We were like, we got to get out of
Yeah.
here. And
Wow.
that crap's scary.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So Poltergeist. Well, let's take a break. We'll come back
okay.
and we'll talk about the movie.
Yeah.
Be right back. All right, Devin. So the movie starts out, and you get the whole kind of. I love the opening because Spielberg. We'll just say Spielberg.
Yeah, let's do it.
The filmmakers introduce us to the family. It's just a camera that kind of goes through the house, shows us everybody in bed,
Right.
and then you see little Carol Ann, 5-year-old Carol Ann, who ends up getting out of her bed, goes down the stairs, sits in front of the TV. And here's the thing, I think my kids watched. So here's what's interesting.
Yeah.
This weekend on, I think it was Friday night into Saturday.
Yeah.
We watched Poltergeist. Later into Saturday, we watched Blair Witch.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because they were out on Poltergeist after the first half. They're
Really?
like, yeah, we're done. Like,
Whoa.
Blair Witch, all the way.
Wow.
Beginning to end.
Wow.
Totally in. All three of my kids.
What was it from their perspective, you think?
Well, it was interesting. Sam just made a comment about the TV being just that concept. Like, what's that, Dad? Like just
static on a TV.
But he was like, the whole like, why does it go to static? It didn't make sense to him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if he's ever seen static.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Like, how fascinating is like this movie doesn't work for me because I don't understand that TVs used to have static.
Yeah. And then I told him, I go, well,
beautiful.
Sam, like, they would cut the TV off at a certain time at night, and they would play the national anthem and cut it off.
Right.
And I'm like, that. I didn't think twice about that.
Right.
But to Sam, he was like, what's going on?
Right.
Like,
right.
And then, like, when Carol Ann, of course, goes into the parents' bedroom, stares at the TV. You got their here. You got the whole moment. And it was interesting just because he loves horror movies and scary movies, and he's like, okay, like staring at TV, it's not that scary to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when the arm kind of comes out, or like that white misty kind of figure arm, whatever, comes out of the TV, it's so animated.
Yeah.
That, of course, Industrial Light and Magic is doing some amazing stuff in the film.
Right.
But in today's standards, it was just like, it looked like a cartoon.
Yeah.
And so Sam was just kind of like, I'll watch a little bit. Like, he watched a little bit just to humor me.
Right.
And he loves 80s stuff.
Right.
But he totally lost.
That's
it.
so fascinating.
He totally lost.
That's
when the
fascinating.
investigators come into the house and start doing he was like, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go do something else. and then later, Blair Witch, he was all in. I don't know why. Totally in.
And he's right around the same age you were when this came out and you saw it.
Yeah,
that's why
he's a little bit older, a
Yeah.
little bit more mature to get some things that I wasn't getting when I saw it.
Yeah.
And so you get the whole, Carol Ann, and I found it creepy on the rewatch where Carol Ann's having the conversation with the TV. She's like, yes, 5, no. I don't. I'm like, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Like, she's hearing this, like having this conversation where we can't hear it. I thought direction wise, that's really clever to do that.
Right. Right.
But then you have like, this kind of like hand come out, hit the wall, everything shakes, but the parents don't really notice it. And then you go to the next day and the pet bird's dead.
Right.
For you, did like when you think back to Poltergeist, does the opening like pull you in? Because I'm looking at my kids and they're like, but like I was pulled in even on the rewatch. I'm like, okay, I'm fine.
Yeah. I think there was enough hype at the time.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of a collective event. I mean, I distinctly remember when Nightmare on Elm Street came out, and that was such like a pop culture zeitgeist that it was just because you were with your friends and there was like the momentum and the buzz about the movie. And I think Poltergeist was very much the same way as far as like this, like we're all going to see this movie.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, it pulled it in because like I'm there with my friends watching this, and so
people knew about it. Like they're here was a thing we heard in pop culture.
Right.
Like it was said often.
And might I also add this, because I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't, that, you know, in Poltergeist 2, they're back, which is the same. They use that audio clip when here we go, Jeremy, when Styx reunited for their 1990 album and tour, Edge of the Century.
What?
Before they took the stage, it was they're back, and then breaking into the opening number. So I had to put that out there.
Well, you know, you're a Styx guy. And
I am, and I hope we do touch on Poltergeist 2 because anyway. But go ahead.
We need to. We need to.
But go ahead.
One of our patrons, Trevor, is going to be very mad if we don't talk.
Oh well, I wouldn't want to upset that guy.
Yeah. So the next day, Diane, the mom, notices that Caroline has like this pet bird. Pet bird's dead.
Yeah.
And there's a few moments early on that I think as a film, I'm pulled in.
Yeah.
It's not super, it is relatable, but it's just, there's a familiarity to it. And it's just like a parent watching Poltergeist. So mom takes the bird, is about to drop the bird in the toilet. Carol Ann walks in and is like, what are you doing?
Right.
And then they do the burial. It's like in a cigar box or a pencil box, you know, and she puts in a flower, you know, a little like some food to eat, a little Blakey.
Yes,
they go bury the bird, and a little foreshadowing of what's coming, and all at the same time, the father, Craig T. Nelson's character, and I think the name is like Steve, I think, but. Steve's watching football with the buddies.
Naturally, he's coach.
It's a great moment where they're watching it. They're into the game. It's the Rams playing someone. I can't remember who they're playing. But then the TV just goes, bzz, and it goes to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And they lose their minds, and they realize it's a similar remote, or there's a messed up connection with their neighbor. He's trying to get Mr. Rogers on for his kids, but it's messing up there. And there's this back and forth with the remote. It's pretty funny, very 80s. Like very, very 80s. And again, my kids were just kind of like yawning.
Don't get it.
You know, my two eldest kids, they could care less about football. Sam's a little more into football, but like, it was just kind of like, oh, okay. I don't know, for you, and I guess we talk about the movie as a whole, does the family connect with you? Like, because you have to sort of care about all the kids, mom, dad. And I think if that fails, the movie isn't effective. Like, it falls short for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think this family is what I will absolutely label as a stereotypical white suburban family of the 1980s. I mean, I think that there was enough of their home, their lifestyle that was very familiar, whether that was like through personal stuff or just through like the commercials and other shows. I mean, it definitely like it fit that mold.
Yeah. Again, Spielberg just kind of like, he's able to have interactions amongst the family that especially if you grew up in suburbia America in the 80s, you're like, yeah, I see this. I get it. You know, it's kind of hectic, crazy. I get it. I buy into it.
Yeah.
You have this sort of establishment of the family. You're introduced to all the characters, their uniqueness, you know, how they'll stand out to you during the film. And here's what, so when Poltergeist came out, I watched it often. Like, I saw it a bunch. But I don't think I've watched it since early 90s till I watched it this week. So there were some things I forgot. And one of the things I forgot was how quick you get into the film. It's before the 30-minute mark. You're like way before the 30-minute mark. You have, you know, Diane, the mom, tucks the kids into bed, turns on the closet light to make sure Carol Ann doesn't get scared. Steve and Diane are smoking pot and they're laughing and having a good time. And then you have, you know, you have kind of this big moment where thunder happens. There's a storm coming, thunder happens, the kids all run into bed, and you have this kind of like earthquake where the room shakes violently. Carol Ann says they're here in the big moment, and it's from that moment on, the big earthquake, what's going on? No one else felt the earthquake. From that moment on, it's really a fast-paced film.
It does have a little giddy up to it. Once it hits that point,
yeah,
it does kind of giddy up. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you go, it's really quick, and then Carol Ann's taken.
Right.
Like, it's like the next night, like you have the big scary moment where Carol Ann's gone.
Right.
Of course, the boy, I want to say Robbie is his name. Let me see if I'm right. Yeah, Robbie. Robbie climbs out and gets pulled out. The tree gets him.
Right.
And they all work to try to get the boy, and then of course that's when Carol Ann gets taken.
Right.
That's so early in the movie. Yeah. I forgot. I thought it was much later.
Okay.
So that was one of the things that I'm like, okay, it felt different to me, this rewatch, because of the pacing was a lot faster than I was expecting. It has some tendencies that are similar to today's movies where you're not waiting around. Like, you gotta go. And that's Spielberg. Like, Hooper might have been a little bit slower, on that, because Texas Chainsaw builds.
I was gonna say it's got a little bit more. Mystery might be an overstatement, but a little bit more intrigue and slow burn.
Yeah. Right. So it's interesting, just like you're going
right.
In Poltergeist, you have so many different kind of set pieces, moments, things that with the ghosts are scary. You have the investigators come in, so you have one of the investigators seeing the food move, the steak move on the counter.
Right.
He goes in and his face comes apart.
Yes.
What's interesting is that almost gave it like a R rating.
Wow.
But here's the argument they made. Raiders of the Lost Ark had the face melting, face exploding.
Yes.
It's not R, it's PG.
Brilliant.
And so that's how they were able to keep it a lower rating. But that's a pretty gross scene, as his face is falling off.
Yeah, because he just starts to peel away at it, right?
Yeah.
And it's just and it just continues to peel. Yeah.
Junk's falling into the sink. And so you got that moment. Yeah. You have the ghost coming down the stairs moment where they're trying to record it.
Right.
You have the tree. You have the clown, which is toward the end of the movie. But you have all these elements. Of course, then you have the giant skull thing coming out of the closet when they're trying to rescue Carol Ann.
Right.
You have another weird kind of creature at one point.
Yeah.
So you have all these different scary elements. The tree, of course. Right. For you as a viewer, was there one set piece thing that really hit that sweet spot of that's a little bit freaky? I'm bothered by that.
Yeah, I've got to say it's the actress that they bring in to play the old lady.
She is kind of terrifying. She was a hit, though.
She was.
Living in the past, when you think back to that time.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive I remember a skit on Saturday Night Live where they made fun of her.
I'm sure.
She
became part of the Zeitgeist. She really did.
She really was.
Yeah.
And not only they're here, but just kind of this, little, here we are,
yes. Yes.
I'm talking to the ghosts. And it was man, it was a thing. And she might be 4 feet 3. I don't know if she classifies as a little person. I don't want to say too much.
No, I mean, she's definitely in that that little person range, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. So you have, I think her name was Tangina Barons, I think was her name, something like that. So you have Carol Ann getting abducted. You have these investigators coming in. I didn't mind the investigation stuff. That's when my kids said, I'm out. Boring. See, I got things to do.
Yeah.
Go play a video game.
Nice.
But I actually liked that.
Yeah.
I liked the investigation. I liked the question I have is if your kid is missing and they try to answer it, where they're we hear your kid's really sick and you're really sick,
right.
Talking to the dad, and he's yeah, we all have the flu, and I'm CPS would be showing up in this situation.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
A kid just disappears,
just gone.
Yeah. So that's a little give me a break.
Right.
But you find out, with this investigation that they're just not equipped to really do what needs to be done to rescue Carol Ann.
Right.
And so you bring in this clairvoyant person, Diane, not Diane, but like Tangina, and she basically reveals there's basically a demon. I think they even refer to as the beast, like that's involved with all of this.
Right.
And that your kid's really in trouble.
Right.
And the stakes when she shows up they just stack up quick.
Yep.
And then you have this sequence, which is really I'm going to give too much away for There Can Be Only One, but my favorite sequence is rescuing Carol Ann.
Okay.
I think it's great. Like they put the rope through, and it comes out through the ceiling downstairs, but it's in through the closet upstairs,
right?
And it's all has ectoplasm on it,
right.
The dad's going to go, but then they realize no, the mom needs to go because dad needs to hold on to the rope.
Yeah,
and mom's
sexist.
No, can you imagine? Those men, they're not that much stronger. So you have mom going in to get Carol Ann.
Right.
I just thought the staging, the sequence, the way it was filmed, the sound design was really interesting. If you go back and watch it, the noise of the kid's bedroom is so loud. They were like yelling at each other.
Right.
Like, you have to go in. Like,
right.
And it really is cleverly staged.
Right.
And I thought that might be the highlight of the film.
Yeah.
When Diane goes in to get Carol Ann and succeeds. Like, it's
right.
really a pretty thrilling sequence.
Right.
They put tennis balls through to test, is it coming out? Like,
right.
And I just thought the sequence was really well done. Does anything like stand out to you when they try to rescue, when you think back to Poltergeist, that whole rescue sequence that you're like, yeah, I like that, or just your thoughts?
I think it's one, it's kind of a visual and plot device that's used in some of these other films in that horror genre within the 80s, but then we see it actually come back with Stranger Things, and particularly season 4, right?
Yes.
With where we're spoiler.
Yeah.
But like in the trailer where they're trying to like go up into the roof of the trailer, but it's really like they're falling down and stuff.
Yes.
And so I think like there's some intriguing things like that whenever you're taking the norm and things that we're familiar with, and you're throwing in the supernatural within those things. I think to me that's super intriguing.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think it draws you in.
Yeah, and I think that to me it's much more than if we're off in like some deserted forest or whatever, right? But it's like, oh, my closet just turned into this freaking
it's a portal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was interesting, and I can't remember what all elements did this, but there was 2 or 3 times when the time that Sam watched, which was really only the first third of the movie, where Sam was like, that's like Stranger Things.
Yeah.
That's like Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, man, they basically stole everything from the 80s to make this show that's super popular right now.
Right.
But yeah, I think it is that's well said. It's like the familiar, and then you put a spin on it.
Yep.
And so we connect with it, but then when the crazy happens, we're kind of pulled in.
Right.
And we're like, oh, how are they going to get out of this? What would I do if I'm in that situation?
Right.
And I think that's very different from like if you set something in a fantasy world or on a spaceship.
Yeah.
Your work is harder when you're in that fantasy sci-fi. It can be done.
Right.
But a lot relies on character at that point, where you have to show a character that you can relate to.
Right.
And then you're in that spot. Like, how would I get out of it if I'm in that spot? Whereas the setting in a modern tale, if it's familiar to you, it's much easier to connect.
Absolutely.
Like the characters don't have to be that drawn out in a way that like you really connect with them. So it's really interesting. Yeah. There are so many things about Poltergeist that are worth talking about. One, though, is the house. It's revealed as the film comes to a climax. That the neighborhood was built on a cemetery, and they just removed the headstones.
Yep,
that's messed up. And there's a great sequence where Craig T. Nelson, who's sort of like a real estate. I think he's like a real estate guy.
Yeah.
Who is their top seller. Like
he's
made them I think he says $4 million in sales, which is crazy in this certain quarter or something like that. Right. Anyways, so he's very successful. He's their top seller. His boss is basically like, well, we're going to have to get rid of this cemetery, and it's up on the hill. It's like, what the hell? Are there cemeteries everywhere?
Right.
Like, is it just a big graveyard out in the hills in California? And so...
yes.
We're finding that out as all the water recedes throughout the world. How many people are buried in those places.
Yes.
And so, but that idea of, I want to make a profit.
Right.
I'm willing to just do all of these things. I actually found that to be a theme that still resonates.
For sure.
Like,
probably more now than ever before. Yeah.
It's really interesting, just that idea of just crooked people trying to make a buck.
Right.
And, of course, just that realization, like, oh, crap, like you're making all this money.
Yeah.
Just recently, there was, the algorithm. I don't know what this says about me, but I was on YouTube, and it tells me what I would like to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And this was before I researched Poltergeist.
Okay. Wow.
But it was a news story of a family that basically someone sent a mom a photo from the cemetery saying, you need to look into this. And it was I believe it was her grandfather's or father's gravesite. And it was totally, something had been reburied. Like there was fresh dirt.
Whoa.
And he had been dead for 15 years.
Wow.
And so they were like, what's going on? So they start asking questions. Here's what's crazy. The woman, they were funeral directors at another place. And so they were like, they knew, like, okay, something's very wrong. What's going on?
Yeah.
But basically, they were having to do some sort of landscaping, and they were disturbing these bodies because there was flooding. But they were literally just taking the body and putting them, like, they were in these like rotten caskets. They were just thrown in with wood and junk all over. It was like trampling on the dead.
Wow.
And they had to exhume the body. And so it's right now, this cemetery and whatever company it is being sued by this family. But it's just like this disregard for those buried. And so they dug up like the news cameras are there when they exhume the body.
Yeah.
And they don't show anything, but they show the family's reaction, which is one of horror.
I'm sure.
As they see how the sight of their loved one was being treated.
Right.
What is that about us where we're very sensitive to how the dead are treated.
Right.
In many places in the Western world. I wouldn't say everywhere, but like we want to take good care of these places. And when I go visit my grandmother and grandfather's graves in Tuscaloosa, like I really care about how everything looks.
Yeah.
Like, are the flowers still blooming?
Right.
What do you think that is? Like, why do you think we feel this like profound connection and desire to preserve these places?
I don't know. I think cemeteries and golf courses are a waste of land space, Jeremy. I think.
Well, this segment went in a different direction.
It is interesting, right? Because even in Santa Cruz, and I don't know if you've been over to it, but on the west side of town, there is a graveyard that has Civil War.
Oh, really? Wow.
Persons from the Civil War that are buried there, and you can look at the whatever remains of the tombstones, and that place has actually become more of an encampment of meth heads.
Of course.
Yeah, naturally. Santa Cruz. Yeah. Vampires. And so like it is interesting, right? Yeah. Where I think that by and large, there is those that are willing to just be like, it is what it is. I mean, and I don't know if you've ever noticed, but like coming toward my house, there's a cemetery relatively close, right? And like over the years, like that has been overgrown, and like
I've never seen anyone in there visiting.
And rarely, but usually because it's so overgrown with stuff. In fact, it's been in court a couple of times because the people that like own that cemetery and were like contracted to be caretakers of it didn't do it.
Right.
And so it is interesting. It is interesting that I think so much of that can fall to the wayside. And I think, like it to no one's surprise, like when profits involved with stuff, corners are cut. Bottom line.
Yeah. So you have that going on, but then you also have like, I wonder if in communities, and I don't know SoCal, if this is the case for SoCal, because you're from there. Yeah. But like, how many people are like you? That grew up
very. Sorry, but
native, like natives, not like you. Devin. You're one of a kind.
I'm special. My mama told me
multiple times. You're special. Yeah, it's just like I wonder if like in transient communities, if you see the cemeteries just kind of falling apart, because like I would take this like kind of a back road to go visit my parents in Alabama. So I'm driving through freaking poor rural Alabama. Yeah. And, there's several cemeteries on that 2-hour drive that I would take. Right. And I don't think I saw a single one that was overgrown. Wow. They were all well cared for, well manicured, and that's not always the case, but these are communities that are not transient. Right. And these are people that like, yep, that's my grandfather's great-grandfather's great-great-great-grandfather's grave. Right. I'm gonna make sure someone's cutting the grass, right? And so I wonder if that even plays a role. But you have this like, this is my big question with Poltergeist. Is like the cemetery's gone, right? No one noticed, right? Like what? Like that was the weird. And I think there might even be a line to try to explain that, where they said, well, we said we moved it here. Yeah. And so we just put the tombstones over here, but the bodies are all still buried. There. Yeah. I think that's how they try to explain it away, but it's like, come on.
Little sketch.
Come on. Someone would have known, right? So that's just my big question with Poltergeist. But we get to it's interesting. Poltergeist has an ending, and it's not the ending. Yeah. We have the rescue of Carol Ann. Everything goes back to normal. They're getting the hell out of there. They're moving. They pack up the truck. But then you have one last hurrah with the Poltergeist, where they come out, and I think it's one of the coolest sequences. Not my favorite, but one of the coolest. Yeah, they actually built a room on a gimbal that like rotated, and there's that famous scene where Jo Beth Williams, Diane, the mom, is kind of like she's going up to the ceiling and rolling around on the floor, I mean, it's crazy sequence, but like. Inception did something like that in the hallway scene where, the guy's running down the hallway and it's like spinning. Right. This was done in 1982. It's not that crazy. Yeah. Come on, Christopher Nolan. You're not that original. But like, you have this just amazing set piece where she's kind of trying to get to her kids, but the poltergeist isn't letting her. Right. The kids are hanging on for dear life. Right. Dad's gone. He went to the office to go get stuff. Yeah. And so it's just mom fighting to save her children. Yeah. And a lot of people say that's the highlight. That's the best part of the movie because she falls into the pool. Right. They're coming out of the pool. Right. I mean,
game on.
Is it the scariest moment of the film?
I don't know if it's the scariest. Yeah. I think if we can separate the nuance between scary and intense, I think it's like the most intense part of the film. But I don't know that it's the most scariest, in my opinion.
Yeah, they feel the most vulnerable at that point. And it's not just because Dad's gone. There's a few elements where it seems like the poltergeist is really flexing its muscles, and saying, no, I'm in control here. Right. And then you have all the bodies coming out of the ground. Loved that stuff. That was really well done from a filmmaking perspective. And then you have the moment where the poltergeist, the creature, the beast, whatever, confronts mom, and mom's trying to pull the kids, and she's like, God help me. You have that moment and she's able to get her kids out. Yeah. And then they take off. Like they draw, and the whole house gets sucked into some sort of portal, and everybody's freaking out. I thought the ending was pretty good. It was sort of a you thought it was over, right? It's not over. So I like that.
That's like many horror movies do, right? I mean, that's kind of like part of the methodology of horror movies. Is like, and again, I'm gonna beat this drum, but like you look at the original Friday the 13th, right? We're out on the lake.
Yeah.
The old lady's got her head cut off.
Yeah.
And then Jason pops out of the water.
Yeah.
And so I think that's to some extent is a trope, but at the same time, I think that is also like, that gives it a little extra dash of spice for us.
Yeah.
Is this a family-friendly horror movie?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't go. I mean, there's the gooey face scene, you know, where he's like his face is falling apart. I guess that might be a kind of like, maybe not if you're a 4-year-old.
Well, I mean, it's funny that, you talk about Sam, who is roughly the same age as my daughter, and like Jeremy, we can't even watch the freaking Mandalorian with my daughter because she's so sensitive. I just laugh that like Sam just like, ghosts coming out on TV doesn't impress me.
Yeah, he really not. Here's the hard stuff because he's 10.
Yeah.
He'll say, "Hey, Dad, I heard about this movie called," and he'll give me some title, and it's like he cannot watch that. And I'm like, "Where'd you hear about that?" "Oh, school. We were just talking about scary movies, and they're talking about this. Can I watch that?" I'm like, "Nah, buddy, no." But I know it has some elements in them like you're just not ready for that. I don't want to have that conversation.
Right?
Yet.
Yeah, and we're not going to be watching The Exorcist quite yet.
Yeah, right. But he. I think he can handle stuff way better than the older two kids in my family. It's weird how kids have these personalities, and he laughs. It's like truly disturbing stuff, and he's just cackling. I think it's the idea of being chased. He loves that stuff.
Yeah.
Even as a little kid, he would like games like tag or something like. If there's a scary element, I mean, he just ate that stuff up. And
I love it.
So he really dug Blair Witch. But he I edited a few parts of Scream out, and he watched that recently.
Yeah.
Like the original 97 Scream.
Yeah.
And he just loved it. He goes, that might be one of the best ones I've seen, Dad.
Wow.
I'm like, okay.
That is a good one. That is a good one.
So family-friendly Poltergeist.
Yeah.
I was talking to our wonderful patron, Trevor.
Yes.
And he said he thinks Poltergeist 2 is scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you land on Poltergeist 2? Because we need to talk about it. Like, I was weirded out more by Poltergeist 2.
Okay.
I don't know if I would say it's scary. What about you?
Yeah.
Like,
well, let me just give you one definitive sentence, Jeremy. A still shot of the creepy old man from Poltergeist 2 is more scary than Poltergeist in its entirety as a film.
Yeah. Julian Beck, he plays Kane. Yeah, he's scary.
Yeah.
He's scary. Yeah. I think it was called The Other Side, I think was the name of it. I saw that probably more than, the original.
Right.
And I don't know why. I think it was just on the rotation, because it came out when I was in junior high.
Yeah.
So, and it was on the rotation on TV.
Well,
and so I just had more access to it, I guess.
I think that's a lot of things, right? Yeah. Where there was this weird point in television history where the originals often weren't on play.
Right.
But the sequels often got a whole lot of airtime, especially if you had cable with things like TBS and TNT and stuff like FX, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's some dark stuff in too.
For sure.
Like at one point, Steven tries to rape Diane.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's some like, what?
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course he's possessed. And,
right.
All that business.
Yeah.
But like, I just found that one to be way darker.
Yeah.
And, you have a different director. Like, it's based on characters, but of Spielberg, but like it's not written by Spielberg. It's not.
Well, it's Jaws 2, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to capitalize on Steven's work.
Yeah, basically, totally different writing crew, producing crew. They got the band back together,
right?
But there's so many. People talk about the curse of Poltergeist, where several of those actors and actresses didn't live much longer afterwards. Like
I did not know this.
The eldest daughter, of course, died.
Wow.
You had the youngest one,
Carol Ann.
Yeah, Carol Ann.
Yeah,
died. I have an article. Let me see. Heather O'Rourke was her name, and she passed away in 1988.
Whoa.
So, right after Poltergeist 2, and then I don't know if the boy, how long he lived. He might still be alive.
Yeah.
But like the eldest daughter also died.
Wow.
And I want to say, I didn't do a ton of research on this because I just didn't want to go down that dark road.
Right.
But like, I think she might have been murdered.
Yikes.
I think so. Wow. I'd have to double check. But yeah, there's like, people talk about the curse of Poltergeist.
Yikes.
And Craig T. Nelson, though, he went on to make Parenthood. And
a Coach.
Coach.
Yeah.
And,
which arguably was a curse unto itself.
Possibly.
Minnesota State or something like that. What was that? Yeah. With Dauber. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That was a thing, wasn't it?
That was a thing. That was a thing.
Oh man. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, there can be only one.
There can be only one.
All right, Devin, what is the single best thing about Poltergeist? It could be a character, moment, scene, line, theme, song. I don't think there was a song about the movie.
Yeah.
For you, what's the best thing about it?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to like stuck in the zeitgeist. They're here. Yeah, that was used on so many different things by so many different people, completely out of context.
Totally.
But I think for me, like that is probably the biggest lasting thing. Of that film for me.
Yeah, for me, it's I totally agree with that. I think for me, it's just, the saving Carol Ann sequence. We talked about it earlier. I think it builds really well to this like climactic moment where Jo Beth Williams saves her daughter. And I find it compelling. I find it like really competently composed sequence. Like it builds and there's like a payoff, and just in terms of filmmaking language, it's really well done. I love that stuff. So that would be my favorite thing. And we're done with Poltergeist, man. I don't know. Do we do Poltergeist 2? Maybe on for our patrons?
Here's what I think we should do, Jeremy. That we'll have to kind of sketch this out off air, but I think we need to do a special on sequels. We just need to have like just like best of the sequels, and maybe almost like a bracketed tournament or something, and do best of the sequels.
I think that's
maybe we could get Carl the Intern to kind of help us out with that a little bit.
Yeah,
Carl, and set that up.
Carl, I think Carl would be happy.
He's probably already got it set up. He's just in one of his filing cabinets ready to go.
Yes, he's probably already done showing us up as always.
Indeed.
Hey, you can find us on Twitter. I don't tweet, but we're on Twitter. It's at Live in the Past, LIVIN the Past. We're on Patreon, though, and that's where we do put stuff, and that's patreon.com/living in the past, LIVININ the past. Facebook, we're there, Live in the Past. Next episode, Devin, Unforgiven, 1992, Clint Eastwood.
Nice.
It is the 30th anniversary.
Nice.
So we got that coming up. Patreon has a bunch of stuff we already have out. We have some commentary tracks coming out. We're going to be doing some video stuff. So if you're interested, you want to support the show, pop on over there to patreon.com/live in the past. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon.